their mouths and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents and have heads, and with them they do harm. So back in verse 12, we're told from last week that the second and third woes are still ahead of us after the first woe is complete. Now, what that's telling you is that these are sequential, and I think that's probably a degree of mercy, because how could you have had all this going on at the same time? So the first woe has to play out, that is, the 5 months has to finish before the next woe kicks in. And as we get to that point here with the second woe, just take a moment to think about what that transition must have been like. Can you imagine what it must have been like for the people to experience the relief of the removal of those 5 months? Right? They suffered what must have seemed like an eternity. And I submitted to you last week, I don't think they knew that there was an end. There's no indication they're told it's going to be 5 months. And so at some point it just goes away. It's like having your life sentence commuted out of the blue. But then a new woe comes. And in this case, it's the form of a great army of horsemen, we're told, led by 4 angels. Now, as we did with the scorpions in the case of the first woe, let's try to make some sense of the characters that are in view here, angels, horsemen, and the like. And once again, the clues in the text will lead you very directly to the answer. So let's go back to the text for a minute. We start with the origin of this judgment. It says here that a voice from the altar in heaven ordered that certain angels be released. Now, the voice at the altar, God himself, is the chief actor causing everything that happens here. He harnesses supernatural agents, angels, to bring about these events. So you immediately begin to see that what's coming here has a supernatural, not natural origin, that being the angels. And then the rest of it just keeps that theme going. You notice next the angels are set loose from a place where they were bound on earth, specifically near the river Euphrates. Angels that are bound, and that would mean in captivity, always refers to fallen angels. You know, God's not up there binding good angels. All right, that doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, to be bound on the earth is itself a reflection of a fallen angel, because the earth is not the home of the angelic realm apart from fallen angels. And then on top of all of that, you have the location of Euphrates, and that itself confirms a demonic source, because Euphrates, the river Euphrates, modern-day Iraq, but it's in the biblical area of Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia is the biblical home, as it were, for Satan. That's his home territory. That's his home field. That's where the Garden of Eden was. That's where the problems began. And as we get deeper into this book, you're going to find that that becomes ground zero for the demonic work of the time of tribulation. So there's a good reason why that part of the world seems so entrenched with darkness and the work of the enemy. And I would submit to you, it's not a surprise that when we send, for example, our soldiers into that part of the world, many of them come back very troubled. May I suggest to you that that trouble may be spiritual and not physically, not just physical. So the Lord begins the second woe judgment by releasing 4 demons, as I'm now calling them, because it's reflective of the text, not just regular angels, but demonic angels. And they had been bound, God says, prepared specifically for this day, for this hour even. What does that mean that they were prepared for this judgment? Well, in simple terms, it just means that the Lord bound them at some prior moment, knowing when he would let them loose, for he had a purpose in mind for these angels, or these demons. And another way to say it is, if they had not been bound at that earlier time, they would have been killing people the whole time. That they're so depraved, they're so terrible, that binding them was the only solution to avoiding the mayhem that they want to create. But then, by the same token, when the time comes, let them loose, and you get what you know you're going to get. But even then, that suggests something deeper, because we know the Lord created all things, including the angelic realm, including those angels who eventually fell. So in a sense, you can say that in the day that the Lord created these 4 angels, even before their fall, he did so knowing that when they fell, they would become especially terrible in their nature, excessively violent and hateful, and the Lord looked forward to that day, knowing how he would put it to work when the time came. I mean,